In the land of Tamriel, there are numerous diseases that afflict the people, from the Corpus disease to the Thracian plague. However, there is one affliction that has existed in Mundus since forever, and that affliction is vampirism. Vampirism is a disease that, if not treated, can turn an individual into a fully fledged vampire that preys on mortals and drinks their blood. These vampires are also immortal beings that can basically live forever, provided you don't shove an axe in their skull. But this begs the question, who is the most powerful vampire in the Elder Scrolls? Hello my fellow hirelings of House Telvanne, I'm Neloth, and today I'm going to discuss who I believe are the best vampires, and at the end, say who I believe is definitively the greatest vampire in all of Tamriel. Before I begin, let me state, as always, that this is not a ranked video, so none of these characters I talk about are in any specific order, with the exception of the last individual I mention. Also, I will not be counting any Elder Scrolls protagonists, as that would make the conversation very limiting. And I also don't care to hear about how your Khajiit vampire OC Dragonborn is the greatest of all time, you fucking peasant. So, with that being said, let us watch the video and suck some dopamine into our veins. Verandis Ravenwatch. Count Verandis Ravenwatch is an Altmer who was turned into a pure-blooded vampire by Lamae Bal himself. He is the leader of his own house, House Ravenwatch, and used to be a member of the Grey Host, an army entirely made up of vampires, were-creatures, zombies, and other vile cretins. Unlike most vampires who are all about domination and embracing their predatory instincts, Verandis was the opposite. He believed that vampires were equal to mortals and only ever fed on willing donors. Anyone else who was a part of his house would also have to follow this code. Now, during Verandis' time in the Grey Host, he attempted to preach his beliefs to other members, but obviously his words fell on deaf ears. Now, we know that Verandis is a little good boy vampire, but why is he a great vampire worthy of this list? Well, because of a bargain that was made, all members of the Grey Host after death are sent to Coldharbour, and Verandis discovered a way to bring vampires out of Coldharbour and mortals from their prospective afterlives. Verandis believed at the time that he could end death altogether and create a world where vampires, were-creatures, and mortals could live peacefully together. However, his experiment caused a mortal woman to be driven insane, which drove Verandis to abandon his work and later desert the Grey Host. Another neat trick that Verandis was able to pull off is his ability to disguise himself as a mortal. While there are many vampires that hide among the mortal populace, they are unable to hide their eyes or teeth or stand around in the sun without a hood. But Verandis can. It's never explained how he can do this, either a vampiric power or maybe a spell originating from the Restoration, Alteration, or Illusion schools, but whatever the case, it does make him a formidable vampire. Verandis was also present in stopping two major calamities to Tamriel. One in Rivenspire, where an artifact called the Abagandra was capable of turning anyone nearby into vampires and blood fiends. Verandis was also present in Markarth, stopping someone I will talk about later from reawakening the Dark Heart, a shadowy imitation of Lorcan's heart possessed by Namira that enhanced the strength of vampires and werewolves. At least, I think. I never played this questline in ESO, and the wiki does a poor job explaining it, but it does sound dangerous nonetheless. So to recap, Verandis was at one point capable of reversing death itself. He can also hide seamlessly as a mortal, an ability most vampires would kill for, and he stopped multiple calamities from turning Tamriel into a bloodthirsty vampiric place. Lord Harkon. Now, I know some people are going to crucify me for not making Harkon number 1, but when I discuss the others, I hope you'll understand why. I hope. Lord Harkon is a Nord that is also a pure-blooded vampire, thanks to dear old Lamae Bal. He is the ruler of Castle Volkihar and leads the Volkihar vampiric bloodline off the coast of Skyrim. Before becoming a vampire, Harkon was a powerful king who allegedly had a vast domain. However, what and where he ruled is up for debate. At one point, Harkon had a midlife crisis and realized he was not long for this world because of his age, and so he made a bargain with, I'll let you guess. Did you guess it? I'm gonna assume you did. That's right, it's Lamae Bal, baby! This bargain allowed Harkon and his family to turn into pure-blooded vampires in exchange for sacrificing 1,000 innocents, and Harkon obliged. Harkon, as a pure-blooded vampire, was gifted an ability most other vampires don't have: the ability to transform himself into the form of a vampire lord. And he is presumably more powerful than any other vampire that has this ability. He is able to summon gargoyles and skeletons at will, and can create a force field that makes him impervious to all attacks, with the exception of Ariel's bow. Not only all that, but he has a powerful katana and a cool shrine to Lamae Bal that seems to have an endless stream of blood. Harkon is really cool and quite powerful, and according to the internet, he is the most powerful vampire ever. But I just have to disagree, as I believe some vampires can contend with him, and a few others might even be more powerful than him. Vyrthur. Not only do I think Arch-Curate Vyrthur is one of the greatest vampires ever, but I think he is even more powerful than Harkon, but let me explain. Vyrthur is one of, if not the last snow elf that wasn't betrayed, alongside his brother Gelebor. Before the Falmer were betrayed and deceived by the Dwemer, the Forgotten Vale was ruled by Vyrthur as Arch-Curate, and as Arch-Curate, Vyrthur ruled in likely all religious matters that pertained to Auriel, the elven version of Akatosh. Vyrthur does state that he once had the ears of a god. However, after a lot of events happened, Vyrthur was infected by one of his own initiates, and instead of protecting him, Auriel turned his back on Vyrthur, which made Vyrthur swear to take revenge. Now, how does a vampiric snow elf living in seclusion take revenge on a fucking god, you might ask? Well, it's simple. He created a prophecy that somehow was recorded across 3 separate Elder Scrolls that speak of requiring Auriel's bow to be drenched in the blood of a daughter of Cold Harbor, and blocking out the sun permanently. Not only would the sun be blocked and vampires allowed to roam freely, but this act would also sever the connection between Aetherius and Mundus, and eradicate Auriel's influence over Nirn. Also, not only did he manage to come up with and almost succeed in a very interesting plan, but he also had exceptional power, especially for a vampire that wasn't directly turned by Lamae Bal himself. Vyrthur has an exceptional proficiency with destruction magic, and was able to knock down the fucking roof of a building and unfreeze Falmer that were frozen and dormant for centuries using just his mind. He also doesn't seem bothered by the sun, unlike other vampires, which could be due to his connection, or lack of connection, with a literal god. Harkon may have been a powerful vampire lord that ruled over his own clan in a massive castle, but he was also a slave to a prophecy written by Vyrthur himself, which makes me feel that Vyrthur is superior to Harkon even without being touched by Molag Bal himself. Lamae Bal. Before I talk about Lamae Bal, please know that I will be mentioning assault of a specific manner that I can't say outright without getting demonetized, and some people might not want to hear about that. If so, you may wish to skip ahead using the timestamps down below. If not, I will try to dance around certain words in order to avoid demonetization, but I have to bring it up because it is core to the story of her character and how she became a vampire. So, Lamae Bal, also known as the Blood Matron, was the first vampire to ever be created. Once a Nedic priest of Arch-Curate, she was unfortunately forced upon by Molag Bal against her will. When Molag Bal was done with her, he shed a single droplet of blood on her brow, which would turn her into the first vampire. Comatose and violated, Lamae was found by a group of nomadic Needs who took her in. However, they believed she was dead, and so they attempted to cremate her on a pyre. The cremation did not go as planned, and Lamae Bal woke up in a state of undeath, as the first vampire. Because she was disoriented and enraged, she massacred the Nedic nomads and feasted upon them. She killed all of the women and children, and she forced herself upon the men, just like Molag Bal did to her. When Lamae returned to her senses, she was horrified at what she had become and what she had done. She prayed to Arch-Curate for help, but Arch-Curate never answered. In that moment, Lamae cursed the names of both Arch-Curate and Molag Bal and swore to undermine them whenever possible. Lamae founded her own cult of vampires called the Cult of Lamae Bal, who Lamae considered her own children. Through a combination of blood and sorcery, Lamae was able to create blood scions who were created to be the antithesis of vampire lords and were able to rival them in sheer power. Now, I considered naming Lamae Bal the greatest vampire because of her being the first vampire and creating the blood scion all by herself with no Daedric influence, and creating her own cult and many other bloodlines. However, there are still many things we don't know about Lamae Bal, as she is more of a mystery. We don't even know if she is dead by the 3rd or 4th era. However, there is one individual that I truly believe is number one. However, before we name the greatest vampire ever, I want to have an honorable mention for Valerica and Serana. Valerica was the wife of Lord Harkon, and Serana was the daughter of the two. Both of them are daughters of Cold Harbor and were infected with vampirism by Molag Bal himself, and are likely vampire lords, but we never see them use that form. Valerica was a master necromancer and alchemist, and she used her knowledge to do something really significant. She was one of, if not the only person, to ever open a stable portal to the Soul Cairn. As the daughter of Valerica, Serana was able to pick up on many things that her mother learned, and became an adept necromancer, and her vampiric powers are quite strong, especially when you consider how Serana was just able to manhandle Vyrthur for a quick second. And now, it is time to reveal the greatest vampire in the Elder Scrolls series. A vampire who has a long series of accomplishments and the skill and power to back it up. So, hirelings and lawmen all, allow me to introduce Verandis al-Saran. Verandis al-Saran was an ancient warrior born in Yokuda who was so gifted in the ways of the blade that he was able to go toe-to-toe with a literal god. While he was born in Yokuda, he fled with the rest of his Ansei warriors to Hammerfell to escape the ruined Yokuda. After fleeing, Verandis al-Saran dedicated himself to perfecting his swordsmanship and eventually learned how to manifest his Shihai, or spirit sword. Radha also took part in the conquering of Hammerfell from the many goblins that lived there, and after the successful conquest, Radha believed he was so powerful that he could match the gods in single combat. Leki, the Yokudan goddess of swordsmanship, supposedly challenged Radha in order to humble him, and after bowing to each other respectfully, they dueled for 3 days and 3 nights, with no one getting the upper hand. The duel ended in a draw, which is beyond incredible. However, Radha, being a perfectionist, saw it as a failure, and because he felt like a failure, he was then unable to manifest his Shihai. This infuriated Radha, and this anger drove him into the clutches of Lamae Bal, where he became a vampire lord and joined the Grey Host. It is unclear how he was infected with vampirism, however, I believe that he was personally touched by Lamae Bal himself. He also eventually relearned how to manifest his Shihai by Red Eagle, the Reachman King whose blade we can find in Skyrim. The Grey Host suffered a massive defeat in the First Era, with Radha being one of the few survivors. However, in the Second Era, he resurfaced as the leader of the Grey Host, with his goal being to free his army from the clutches of Lamae Bal, and making his army as immortal as the Daedra themselves by reawakening the Dark Heart. Radha al-Saran very nearly succeeded in awakening the Dark Heart, using his mastery of the Vampire Lord form, and also conjuring an entire apocalyptic storm known as the Dark Storm. However, he was outwitted by Verandis Ravenwatch and was consumed by the Dark Heart. Also, a fun fact about Radha al-Saran, he was actually a contender for my Greatest Warrior video. However, due to the length and the fact that he ended up being a vampire, I decided to axe him from that video, but he is now making his presence here as the greatest vampire to ever be seen in the Elder Scrolls. And that is all I wrote. A video where I spoke about the greatest vampires and named who I believe is the greatest. Now, this was completely based off of my opinion, so if you have a different idea for who the greatest vampire is, let me know down below. And hopefully you don't get too bloodthirsty about how Serana and Valerica were just honorable mentions. I just wanted to make sure the video wasn't too long, and I believed some of the others were just greater. So with that being said, make sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
Please, O hero of Skyrim, I shall be ever so grateful.